You know, I've never actually done one of these where the background footage is actually live. These are modders making, well, let's get on to that. Mount and Blade has always had its fair share of modding. From the days of Third Age to Napoleonic Wars, a huge part of its success has been from this community coming together to create something, well, bigger. In the last couple of years, the newest title, Bannerlord, has brought upon the biggest version of some of these modifications, like Persistent Empires, an open world RPG that I personally was really waiting for. Coming off the back being inspired by Persistent World back in the predecessor game Warband, PE has been somewhat of a success. Starting off as a nothing peasant, running around being halted by every bandit in existence, training as serfs, mining for silver and iron, selling to purchase your finest armor before enlisting in an army and inevitably dying, just to start all over again. You know, your average game loop. Whoa, okay. You want me to mine this specifically? Attack! Not just a pretty face, boy.
This is the walk of shame.
Yet something a little different came across my desk the other day. It said, hey, Resonant, we've got something for you. There's a new persistent mod. This one is called Persistent Bannerlord. There are 2 mods now, both boasting open worlds, fully multiplayer, role-playing from anything, from a peasant to a craftsman to a soldier or even a lord, in this consistent and persistent world. But why? What's going on here? And does it delve a little bit deeper than I first thought? Well, yes, it actually does in some ways, because Persistent Bannerlord and Persistent Empires are pretty much going up together head to head. They are not on the same team, but I think they should be. Persistent Empires was the first. That was released a couple of years ago and has been the staple, yet mostly only because it's the only option if you want your open world Bannerlord fix. Of course, it had huge clans and it's still got big servers with a lot of people on it, but one of the main issues is that it's all official. Only the modders themselves can create servers and only them have full control over what happens within their modification. Some would say fair enough, others clearly want more. And this is where Persistent Bannerlord came in. The initial idea and the way it was approached to me was there needs to be more of an open look at this modding scene. The whole point of community content is to make it just that, part of the community, and shutting the behind the scenes off where only certain people can host games and control what maps or modes are within them just doesn't feel right with the larger success of Mount and Blade. Okay, brilliant. Sounds great. Thank you very much. Speak to you soon. Bye. I'm trying to look for flat. It's so stressful. But it's not all about how it's just a bit more open. But rather than me explaining it all, let's talk to the lead developers.
Well, this is my job day to day, so this is what I do. And then when I was younger, I used to play this original version of this game mode, which was Persistent World. Once I wanted to start modding, I saw that there was a persistent mod already. So I was like, oh, well, great. I'll just go play that instead. So I played it. It somehow felt like it was a miss, you know, despite all the performance issues, etc. Like just the overall feeling of the mod felt very cheap. And then all the excuses we would be getting and stuff about tailwards this, tailwards that. I just kind of want to, you know, it wouldn't cost me anything. And I wanted to try and see how really bad all these tools and tailwards was.
So it is very close to release. They're pretty much just trying to pick a date at this point. And I've actually had a chance to play it. You see, they had some testing weekends the last few months. So I thought I'd hop on and see what it's all about. Right, why is there a cross your arms button?
It's important. It's part of the vision, okay?
What did you say? Sorry.
If you're standing still, you press caps lock, you put your hands on your hips or cross your arms.
I think that's just idle animation. It's the... Otherwise, you just stood there like ready to fight. It didn't look so good. So.
Oh, I like it. I like it.
You get your hand down your pants.
First things first, it is very much feeling like that Persistent World vibe. The map is still pretty basic, and as you can see from this, well, they're still building a lot of it. But like the old Persistent World, you could walk into a room and train as a certain faction, whether you wanted to be an archer, a serf, a craftsman, a blacksmith, or even a heavy knight, depending on how much money you want to spend, but you get those skills in order to use those weapons, arms, and armor, or craft certain things. One of my favorite things that it actually changes from Persistent Empires is it takes away a lot of the really annoying menus. You know, those markets in PE that you'd have to go into and you'd type in what armor you want to sell and then you could sell it through there. This is much like the original Mount & Blade Warband Persistent World, where you just head up to an item on a rack and you press F on it to buy it, or you do the same to sell it. It's so much easier, and I don't know why they changed that in Persistent Empires. It was what I wanted all along, and it makes the whole gameplay flow so much more focused on what you're actually doing aside from just buying armor, which, you know, in Persistent Empires just takes so much unnecessary time. I didn't delve too much into the crafting or resource collection, but the whole idea of this is it's supposed to be a little bit more faithful to the original Persistent World, yet advance it so much more than what Persistent Empires has ever done. And of course, it's still Mount & Blade, so you will just get robbed on sight. I'm not sure there's anything we can do about that. This guy thought he could take me, and look, okay, he did. He did, Matt, but I put up a pretty good fight, I will say that. But despite this being very close to release, I have a few questions. Because whilst I am making this video because of the new resurgence of these two mods coming up neck and neck, two mods that are fighting against each other for the place, one of them was the original. One of them has been here from the start and has already got a player base. The other one is trying to take its crown by being a little bit more faithful to the original and use, as they claim, better modding skills in order to advance it beyond what Persistent Empires could ever do. On top of that, making it way more accessible for the community as a whole, letting anybody host their servers and being way more open in terms of the back end.
94.
Weak.
Alright.
You're right there, bud. Some man has just thrown a cow at me.
That's peak gameplay, isn't it?
And it's crashed my game.
What? Hey, Guru, can you throw the cow at me too, please?
It might seem like Persistent Bannerlord is the better idea, but in reality, we don't know just yet because it hasn't released. And actually, I think both of these modders need to work together. I mean, Yuri said when I was speaking to him that he did try and get in contact with Persistent Empires and the development team to try and be a part of it, but they just didn't respond. So that was the catalyst for him to actually go and make his own mod. Yet, this just reminds me of another story. The sword and musket, guns and powder rivalry. The two Napoleonic wars for Bannerlord that, once again, are neck and neck. Sword and Musket is the multiplayer focused one and Guns and Powder is the single player one, but both set within Napoleonic Wars and both to some extent doing the same thing. There's been so much drama of both of them fighting, Florian, who's in Guns and Powder, and Lucon, who is the developer of Sword and Musket, both saying that each has stolen from each other, that they're copying, and it just seems like it's not good for the community. Competition often is when it's to do with games, when it's to do with spending money, because you want them to be the best possible as you're putting your funds towards it. But for mods that are free, all you need is a player base. Anybody that owns Mount & Blade can download any of these modifications for no money whatsoever, so it's about funneling this community into one place, rather than splintering it off into different sections. And naturally, this ends up happening in the end. I think for a while, much like Guns and Powder and Sword and Musket have come to terms with them going separate ways, one being a multiplayer expansion, the other being single player. I think Persistent Bannerlord and Persistent Empires might come to that conclusion as well. And whilst this looks incredibly promising, and I'm absolutely loving talking to the developers and the passion that they have for this project, it seems like they do have the talent and they do have the know-how in order to get this off the ground and make it a success. It also seems that there is a want for it. A lot of people I've spoken in the community, especially clan leaders within Persistent Empires, are saying that they are fed up of not being able to host their own servers, that they don't want to be held to ransom by the Persistent Empire developers. This is why a new modification kind of needs to exist, but I think in the end, one will die off and the other will be a success. Which one? Well, I guess we'll find out.